SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to optimumcbd.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs.
I lost my schedule, but it's alright. There's only really one thing to talk about in rugby league this week, and headlines should read, Daly Cherry-Evans derails Manly season. We don't care about what happens off field, but I guarantee you they're going to be caring about what's happening off field right now. How you going, man?
Yeah, good, thanks, John. Yeah, it's a big story. I have a feeling we're going to be spending a fair chunk of time on this one. A lot of layers to it. It's the biggest story in rugby league in a long time. Yeah, and as I say, a lot of layers to it. Like, there's no... You can sort of see where both sides are coming from to a degree. It's not... I don't think it's a straightforward situation at all. And there's certainly arguments that can be made on both sides here.
Yeah, well, I think the way it's played out is the really the why it's a talking point. Players leave clubs all the time, but players don't inform the club that they plan to either play on or retire in December, and then in March on NRL 360, while the panel is hammering the club, the CEO calls up and says, everything you're saying is wrong. And then half an hour later, the player goes on a different show, 100% footy, and says, no, I'm definitely leaving.
Yeah, that's right. I think the writing was on the wall when you saw him on 100% footy. You went, well, he's not going to go to that effort of appearing on a TV show unless he's got something big to say. He's not just going to sit there and go, oh, okay, half an hour ago they offered me a new deal. Oh, that's fine, I'll take the deal. That's just not going to happen. Clearly, he'd made up his mind by that point. It was too little too late by that point. And I'd have to say, they offered $1.5 million for 2 years, Manly. That was their last minute offer. So that's $750,000 a year. If Dylan Brown's going to be getting $1.3 million a year, $750 is very low for DCE, I have to say.
I was having a conversation about it yesterday, and people were saying, like, he's 37, or he'll be 37 by the time it comes around, 2 years, as if you pay $1 million for a 37-year-old halfback. But the fact of the matter is, he's in the top 3 halfbacks in the game. And so... you have to pay that much for him because that's how much the best halfbacks in the game are worth.
Yeah, well, and that's right. So you put Nathan Cleary is obviously the best halfback in the game. Number 2, probably Jerome Hughes. And then after that, you're probably looking at, like DCE or Mitchell Moses. But look, on complete career achievements, I know he's older, but you'd have DCE ahead of Mitch Moses, I would have thought. So you probably are looking at the number 3 halfback in the game still. And as we've talked about, and I know Dylan Brown's a lot younger, but if Dylan Brown can be getting $1.3 million a year, well then $750 is not enough for DCE, even at this latter stage of his career. So I guess we're sort of looking at it going, well, he'll turn 37 in February next year. So by the time he gets to this new club, he'll be 37 years old. So the way I see it is we're looking at a 2-year max deal for this new club. They're not going to get more than 2 years out of him. So this is going to be a really quick hit-and-run mission with another club. And then you go, well, what's his motivation? Well, his motivation is going to be to win a premiership. And then you go, well, where does he go to win a premiership? And I know on NRL 360 last night, they'd narrowed it down to 4 clubs who are in the running. Apparently, obviously, the Dolphins are in the running because it's the romance of him going back to where it all started. The Titans are in the running as well, even though he backflipped on them 10 years ago. He does have a close relationship with Des Hasler, obviously, their long association at Manly. But then I think it got down to the two who are really in the box seat, and it's two Sydney clubs. It's the Roosters and it's the Bulldogs. And I think they're in the box seat because if it's only going to be a 2-year deal, well, his kids are going to school in Sydney. It'll be a lot of effort to up them and leave and go to Queensland only for 2 years. That's a lot of effort for someone who's only looking for a 2-year deal. I would have thought far more realistic that he's going to go to a Sydney club, and given the reporting that I've read, I think it's going to be one of those two.
Yeah, the thing with the Roosters is a bit, it brings me back to Cooper Cronk coming in and replacing Mitchell Pearce, because I think people put the Roosters in for everything, right? You know, no matter what the player is, apparently the Roosters are interested in every single time he's off contract. And people are saying now, right now, the Roosters need a halfback because their halfback is Chad Townsend. But everyone's forgetting that Sam Walker he's not playing because he doesn't have form. He's not playing because he's injured. And last year he was the $1 million halfback. You know, he was the next $1 million halfback because he was the 6th best halfback in the league or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on what... We don't... like we discussed at length, nobody knows what the hell's going on over at the Roosters recruitment. Are they looking for a quick fix where they bring in Daly Cherry-Evans, or do they actually have the plans to nurture Sam Walker and Sandon Smith as their long-term halves combination? You know, so I know... The Roosters everyone is talking about, but I think the media and everyone is talking about it because they're just forgetting that Sam Walker exists. When you look at the clubs that need halfback right now, obviously it's the Bulldogs' weakness, and it's hard to actually highlight anything as a Bulldogs' weakness considering they've won 3 from 3. And last week without their 5/8, right?
Yeah, and without kick-out as well.
Yeah. So it's hard to say anything is a weakness. Could they benefit from a Daly Cherry-Evans? Well, there's 15 clubs in the league now. Well, 14 minus Manly. 14 clubs that can benefit from Daly Cherry-Evans. Even I would made the joke that he should go to Parramatta, or he'll go to Parramatta. I made a joke. I guarantee you he'll be at Parramatta next year. And everyone was like, "Why would he go there to replace Moses?" I'm like, "Why wouldn't he go there to partner Moses?"
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Well, they're losing Dylan Brown, so he fits in there. I guess the only thing is, like, if you're thinking about it from Cherry-Evans' point of view, he's not going to win a comp at Parramatta in the next couple of years. That's the thing. So this is a thing, and if we're looking at the two real contenders, I think the Roosters and the Bulldogs, we've talked in depth about the amount of experience the Roosters lost at the end of last year. I think it was something like 1,250 games of experience they lost. So if I'm Cherry-Evans, I'd be looking at that going, well, this is a team that's, you know, obviously in recent times had a lot of success, but they're on the slide at the moment. Whereas I'd look at the Bulldogs and go, well, they're on the improve. And the halfback, Cherry-Evans, if he joined the Bulldogs, he gets them into premiership contention. He absolutely does. It does, and I know I would say that, but it does seem like a really good fit. The timing would be perfect for the Bulldogs if he lands at the Bulldogs.
I would liken it to the Michael Maguire odds effect on the Broncos, you know. Next year you're going to have, like... Obviously it's next year, but we never know what will happen. It could be tomorrow. Next year you might have the Bulldogs at, like, you know, paying $30 to win the premiership, and then the day they announce the signing of Daly Cherry-Evans, they'll firm into third favourites. Like, that's what it would do to the Bulldogs. But I don't think it'll have that big of an effect on a bunch of other clubs. You know? That's
right. So that's the thing. You're looking at Sydney clubs who need a halfback. And look, this is the thing. Look, Toby Sexton, he's done a good job, but that you take Cherry-Evans over him. That's just the way absolutely. It is. And, you know, from the Roosters' point of view, they do. You're right. They have Sam Walker to come back. But I think if push came to shove, they would take DC over Sam Walker. They just would. That's how they are. They did the same thing with Cooper Cronk and Mitchell Pearce a number of years ago.
I just mean with the Roosters, because nobody can understand the current recruitment policy, it's hard to say that, even despite the rumours, it's hard for me to see that they're definitely interested in him. Because it is like every single player that comes off contract, the Roosters are interested in, according to the media. And everyone's talking about it'll be the Roosters or the Bulldogs. But I don't think anyone can say it with regards to the Roosters with that much confidence. Because you just don't know what the hell's going on over there, you know?
No.
We've talked about it, like, you just don't know. Like, would they... There are currently, as I said, 14 clubs that benefit from Daly Cherry-Evans. The only 2 clubs that wouldn't are Panthers and Melbourne. Every other club, including Parramatta, who has Mitchell Moses, would benefit from Daly Cherry-Evans.
Parramatta would want him, there's no doubt about it. But
and then you've got to sit there and go,
going,
what is Daly Cherry-Evans going to go for? Is it Premiership glory, or is it an extra couple of $1 million? Premiership glory, even going to the Roosters, as an outsider, as Daly Cherry-Evans, unless they sit him down and go, we're going to explain this wackadoo stuff that we've been having going on, and here's how we're going to win a premiership. And then what you'd have to say is, if Daly Cherry-Evans actually ended up signing with the Roosters, you'd have to think like, oh my God, they have a really good plan, actually. Because from an outsider looking in, from every outsider looking in right now, you wouldn't want to go to the Roosters because they seem like a basket case in the recruitment thing. So if Daly Cherry-Evans is chasing premiership as well, from the other side, if Daly Cherry-Evans is chasing premiership glory, you got to be looking at the Roosters and going, I don't know what's going on over there. It's probably not a good idea to maybe go there. The Dragons, bro.
They always find a way, though.
Yeah,
They'll promise post-career work. Not that Daly Cherry-Evans is going to have any problem finding work post-career, and I think the way that all played out with him announcing it on Channel 9, I've got a feeling that he's going to be commentating on Channel 9 after his career. I'd say that'd be part of the deal. Give us the exclusive and we'll look after you later on.
He's already shown that he can break exclusive stories live on air.
Exactly.
It's about himself.
Good training, but I think it's interesting. There's real mystery around what's caused this at Manly. Obviously, there is a rift that's gone on because if there wasn't a rift, if it was all happy family, he would have made the announcement with the coach and the CEO alongside him at a press conference, and he didn't make the announcement like that. He's made the announcement on a TV show. So, obviously it's not all happy family, and there's a rift there. Now,
I heard the story about how Anthony Seibold wasn't invited to Daly Cherry-Evans' wedding.
Yes.
So, that one I also like. Okay, first of all, we know that Anthony Seibold has history of putting players offside.
Yeah.
We also know that Daly Cherry-Evans has a history of putting coaches and players offside, marching to the beat of his own drum, right? But the thing about the wedding, and I had it quoted to me so many times yesterday, so many times. Yeah, there's a rift because he didn't invite Anthony Seibold to his wedding. But what they're leaving out is, who else didn't he invite? Was the entire coaching staff there? Were even the entire team there? I don't know. And nobody seems to know. But who you leave out when you invite people to the wedding has a lot to also do with who you invite.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not enough on its own to read anything into it.
Exactly, but everyone's trying to say there's something there, but you can't... I didn't invite heaps of people to my wedding because I had a limit on the amount of people I had.
Yeah, that's the thing. Just because you don't invite somebody doesn't mean you don't like them. As you say, you might have a limit on the number of people you can invite. Seibold hasn't been there for very long as well. They wouldn't have, they don't have a long-term relationship, those two. It's not like it was Des Hasler who he left off the invite list. Again, I don't know if Des Hasler was invited or not, but what I'm saying is...
because you're not getting the full story.
Well, that's the thing. What I'm saying is Seibold hasn't been there as long as Des Hasler, so it's not like he's leaving a long-term coach off the invite list.
If the story was he left Anthony Seibold off his invite list and invited Trent Robinson, we're like, well, he's definitely had a falling out and he's definitely going to the Roosters.
Yeah.
But who knows? I guess Anthony Seibold has a history, like the Broncos, apparently a lot of the players didn't like working with him.
Yeah.
But Daly Cherry-Evans has had... Look, I know he had a much publicised issue with Jackson Hastings, but that guy,
he has issues everywhere he goes, right?
With that one that you can't blame Daly Cherry-Evans on, but he did have... There was a time when he was apparently disliked by the Queensland team. There's been other players that have not spoken too fondly about him. Like, they've never said negative, but they've not. But then you also have, players. We've had players on. Craig Gould talked about it in one of the episodes he was here about how, you don't like everyone you play with.
Mm.
You don't have to, as long as you play with them.
Yeah.
It's only if it's causing the fact that you don't like each other causes an issue in the team that there's a issue. So, like with Jackson Hastings. So, this whole Anthony, he doesn't get along with Anthony Seibold because he didn't invite him to his wedding is a nothing story.
Yeah, you're right. It's not about that, but I suspect from the outside looking in, I've got a feeling that I think Anthony Seibold, the way that he left, you talked about how he was at the Broncos before. I think the way that he left the Broncos in such terrible circumstances he had a 5-year deal. He didn't even make it through 2 years of the 5-year deal at the Broncos. That gives me the feeling that I suspect someone like Seibold would lack authority with the players, and they wouldn't have that much respect for him. I could see someone like DCE with all his achievements in the game, premiership winning halfback, a Clive Churchill medalist, a Queensland representative, Australian representative. I could see a player like him looking at Seibold and going, "Oh, what would you know? How can you tell me what to do?" Seibold's been at Manly since 2023. In 2023, Tom Trbojevic only played 11 games and they didn't make the 8. 2024, he plays 20 games and they make the 8. I think we know why Manly made the 8, and it wasn't because of Anthony Seibold's great coaching. It was because Tom Trbojevic played a bigger chunk of the season than he did the year before. That's why Manly made the 8. The players would all know that. So I suspect there's an issue with Seibold really lacking the authority with his players. That's one point to make. Another point to make is DCE, and again this is purely speculation of course, but is DCE looking at it and going, well gee, the only way we can really win a comp here at Manly is if Tom Trbojevic plays the whole season, and he just never plays the whole season. So maybe DCE's privately had a moment where he's gone, I think I'm better off moving to another club if I'm going to get another premiership here. Because Manly just haven't won a premiership since the Trbojevic brothers have been there. And that's another issue, because a lot of their salary cap goes in not many players. And the risk with that is, well, if they get injured, well, then you got large chunks of your salary cap sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah, it's what is it? He's allowed to sign at any time, so we'll have to see what happens with Daly Cherry-Evans. So funny if he goes to Parramatta or the Titans, man. Seriously, that's the two that I just think would be the most hilarious ever.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then, then we've got this issue of, well, from Manly's point of view, right? That's why I said that there's a lot of different angles to this, and it's hard to have a definitive opinion either way. Well, Manly are probably going, well, yeah, we signed you on that huge 10-year long-term deal, and we haven't delivered a premiership in that time for us. So, that again, they won one premiership with Daly Cherry-Evans. That was in his first season with the club in 2011 when he was a kid and wouldn't have been on much money. Since he's been on the huge, I'm not sure if it was a 10-year deal. I think it might have been an 8-year deal, and then he added another couple of years later. But anyway, it was a long-term deal on huge money. Since he signed that deal, he hasn't delivered them a premiership. They haven't played in a grand final since 2013. That's 12 years ago now. That's, so that's the other layer to this is there's part of Manly that might be going, well, you're a great player and everything, of course, all the achievements I talked about before, but you haven't won us a premiership since you've been on the huge money as well. He really has, he's taken up a huge chunk of their salary cap for the last 10 years. But, I mean, if you look at their salary cap, right, I think, look, I personally don't even think Cherry-Evans is the problem or Tom Trbojevic is the problem. I think the problem is Jake Trbojevic being on $950,000. He shouldn't be on more than $300,000, seriously. So that's $650 they're spending that they shouldn't be spending. The other problem is Luke Brooks on $660,000. Like, come on, you could have a minimum wage kid on $130,000 And there you save over 500 grand. They're in one hit. If you put Jake Trbojevic on 300 grand instead of 950, you save 650 in one hit. That's over $1 million they could save just like that. Those are where the problems are, I think, not necessarily with DCE or Tom Trbojevic.
I totally forgot Luke Brooks was there.
But that's the thing. Like people last year saying, "Oh, he was better. They made the 8." He had nothing to do with it. It was all DCE and Tom Trbojevic last year.
Well, like you said before, 11 games 2023 missed the 8. 20 games in 2024 make the 8.
Yeah. So it wasn't Anthony Seibold's brilliant coaching.
It's not because Luke Brooks was there. It wasn't. I mean, I remember at the beginning of last year. It was last year when Luke Brooks went to Manly. Yeah.
Yes.
And everyone was like, "Oh wow, look how well he's playing." But still, it all comes down to whether Tom Trbojevic plays. Luke Brooks is, probably in the top 10 halves in the game, but it's obvious that he needs a partner to run.
Yeah, well, he didn't make the 8 in his whole career at the Tigers. And when he was playing last year in the games where DCE wasn't there, the few games that DCE wasn't there, and he was on his own, he wasn't producing for them.
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with him. You could have had, as I said, a young player on minimum wage who would have done the job that Luke Brooks did last year for them. And as I say, if they weren't paying him $660, if they had someone there on the minimum wage of $130, and if you weren't paying Jake Trbojevic $950, come on, $950 for Jake Trbojevic.
That's your state's captain, Dan. Why? He played 20 minutes in State of Origin as the captain.
But that's the thing. Like DCE 1.2 million, Tom Trbojevic 1.15. Like DCE's worth the 1.2. Tom Trbojevic, the issue with him is the injuries. When he's on the field, he's worth that money.
Does any other team have 2 $1 million players?
I can't think of one off the top of my head. Maybe. Oh, actually, I don't know. I mean, Cleary would be at Penrith. Munster would be at Melbourne.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't think
Jerome Luai at
West Tigers. Yeah. They wouldn't have anyone else on over $1 million.
They don't have anyone else.
No, I think they might be the only ones.
Yeah, that says a lot.
Yeah, that's right. 2 of them on over $1 million. One of them who's very injury prone.
Yeah,
as well.
It says a lot. Like it says a lot that they're the only team with 2 players on over $1 million. Someone can correct us if we're wrong, but I don't think we're wrong.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone else.
Newcastle will be the next, right? Next year, Newcastle will.
With Dylan Brown, yeah.
And you look at Manly, you know how that works out.
Yeah, that's how it works out at Manly with 2 great players on that money. Yeah. Let alone having Dylan Brown on $1.3 million a year.
Look, he's going to go somewhere. I like one guy that I know. Shout out to Sam. He's insistent that DC is just trying to get his price driven up and he'll stay at Manly. But I think right now there's too much bad blood for him to stay there. I'm really interested to see how this affects them in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
As a team. They've got the Eels, so they got the bye this week, right? If the Eels go out and put 20 points on them and beat them, you've really got to say the only reason would be because the off-season drama.
Yeah, and the timing isn't great for Manly either, is it? I mean, at least if he was leaving, if they had to put it to bed pre-season, gotten it all out of the way pre-season, well, then you could have put it behind you and moved forward. But for this to blow up after 3 rounds of the season, yeah, it's terrible timing.
They've got a pretty tough couple of weeks that this could really disrupt this. So they do have the Eels this week, so they got the bye. But then they're playing the Storm at home, like at Manly home. Sharks away, then they got the Dragons, then they got the Panthers. Then they have the bye, and then they play the Sharks again. So they got quite a few really tough games in there, and it could be a downward slide, off-field drama. Combine that with some really tough games where they, won't be given. No one's going to tip them against the Storm, probably the Sharks or the Panthers. Even if they're going well, you probably wouldn't tip them. But at this point, so it could really derail the whole season, and then it will be like the trigger that derailed the whole season is this drama, off-field drama. Yeah,
well, that's right. Yeah, look, it's very interesting. I think I saw a reporter went and found Cherry-Evans yesterday. And he had a huge smile on his face. I think he's loving the attention, by the way. I think he's lapping it up. And is there? And we know how he, that whole saga that happened 10 years ago with the Titans, where he signed there and then he backflipped and stayed at Manly. Does he have a need for feeling wanted by a club? Is there some, is he bored? Is he just bored with Manly? Is it a case of, does he want to feel wanted by someone else? Would it have just been too boring to just play out the last couple of years of his career at Manly? Did he want some last sort of big song and dance? Does he want to be chased by other clubs? Does he want that?
It could be
that media sugar hit of what's he going to do? Where's he going to go? Where is he today?
The money. What I heard yesterday, I was at a Western Sydney Wanderers golf day yesterday, but there was a few rugby league insiders there. What I heard yesterday is it was the initial offer they gave him in December, where he said basically, no, I'm probably not going to take it. Was 1 year at 600,000, and to be honest, that's a little bit insulting. In the state of the current halves in the game, the fact is, Daly Cherry, if Nathan Cleary is $1 million, and Dylan Brown is $1 million, and Jerome Luai is $1 million, they're $3 million halves, right?
Well, Cameron Munster would be on $1 million.
I don't think he is, man. I think he's on less than $1 million, like 850, 950.
I'm going to look up his salary.
I know what you're saying. They're worth $1 million, but I'm just saying they're getting paid. These are the ones that are getting paid $1 million, right? Because Jerome Hughes is worth $1 million, especially if Dylan Brown. Dylan Brown has set this standard. What is worth $1 million? Yeah, Jerome Hughes is worth fucking $3 million.
Look, just according to reports, Munster's on $1.1 million, but it's all right.
And so then there's Daly Cherry-Evans is in that caliber of player because it's not a matter of when you're doing your salary negotiations, right? It's not a matter of this player is worth this much money. It's how much will I spend on a halfback, really, right? How much will I spend on a 5'8"? How much will I spend on a fullback? And they do have those sliding scales of value. And so it's like Daly Cherry-Evans is $1 million half based on the quality of halves we have available. Yeah. So if someone comes to him and says, especially Manly, who he's been with forever, they're 1 year at $600,000, and he says, well, if I play on, I want to play 2 years. And then they say, well, we're giving you 1 year at $600,000. And then he goes and says, well, I'm out then. I'm just going to, if I decide to play on, I'll go somewhere else because I know I can get, tons of clubs will throw $1 million at him. I think the Bulldogs probably wouldn't. I think Gus Gould is too much of a shrewd negotiator to throw $1 million at him. The way they manage their salary cap over there, but it would be, all right, we're not going to give you $1 million. We're going to give you 800,000 or 900,000 the 2 years you want, and there's a high chance of premiership.
That's the thing. The advantage is that I just mentioned that for the last 10 years he's taken a big chunk out of Manly's salary cap. He has, but the advantage for his new club is going to be, well, it's only going to be for 2 years. It's not going to destroy his salary cap for a long period of time.
Yeah.
It's a quick sugar hit contract.
The Roosters would give him $1 million for sure because it'll be like 600,000 on the salary cap and then $600,000 under the sombrero. But to go to it, and then their response is apparently the response is 2 years at $750 each
from Manly.
From Manly,
yeah.
And so that's still kind of insulting.
Well, it is. I mean, the thing is. Daly Cherry-Evans, he's a premiership winning halfback. There are not many of them in the NRL. Nathan Cleary, Jerome Hughes, Chad Townsend and Adam Reynolds are the only other ones off the top of my head. Off the top of my head, those are the only other 4 premiership winning halfbacks in the comp.
Jerome Luai now. Because he's a halfback now.
When he won them, he was 5'8". But yeah. So
Jerome Luai now.
But yeah, so that's not many premiership winning halfbacks in the comp, and I know he's a fair age, but like Dylan Brown getting $1.3 million a year, like come on, if Dylan Brown's getting $1.3 million a year at Newcastle, then you got to do a bit better than $750 a year for DC.
That's what it really, when you think about it. If they had offered him $750 in December or whatever for 2 years, he might have taken it. But now that Dylan Brown's got that monster deal at Newcastle. If I was Daly Cherry-Evans or any halfback above Dylan Brown, apparently he's going to Newcastle to play halfback as well. So if I'm any halfback in the league, then I know I'm above Dylan Brown in the pecking order. I'm like, dude, if he's worth 1.3, Like, I'll go back to the Todd Carney quote. If he's worth 1.3, Nathan Cleary's worth 2.8.
Yeah.
And it's a scale downwards there, boys.
Dylan Brown's done all the other halves in the game a real favour, hasn't he?
Like
because
Nathan
now
Cleary's...
they can use his salary as a reference point.
Nathan Cleary's 2.8, Jerome Hughes 2.5, Mitchell Moses and Daly Cherry-Evans are worth like 2.
Well, that's the thing. If Dylan Brown's getting 1.3, then Cherry-Evans could make a case to be getting 2 million.
Exactly. So yeah, that's I think really that's what's broken it completely. But yeah, it's we'll see what happens in the next few months and the next few weeks with Manly. Still kind of on Manly. I don't know why I trusted the Raiders this week, but I tipped the Raiders, as did many people, and Manly pumped them, and of course it was anyone but Ricky Stuart's fault. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely the referees, although he's not allowed to talk about the referees, so it's actually Andrew Abdo's fault.
Yeah.
40 points scored on him?
Yeah.
Andrew Abdo's fault.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I did do a column about this yesterday. Yeah, look, some of the quotes from Ricky Stuart after the game. He says, and I quote, "I'm not allowed to talk about the ref, but I hope Andrew Abdo has an answer for us all," he said. Then he said, "I don't think there's a football team in the competition that's going to defend at those statistics and win," end quote. So and as I said, statistics like what? They completed 6 of 12 sets in the first half.
Yeah, he's right. You know what he said was factual. You know, it's true.
Because it was their own fault. They completed only 6 of 12 sets in the first half.
Not a team in the competition that could have a 50% completion rate and give away 7 ruck infringements or whatever it was and still win. You're right.
Yeah.
But it's not a referee's fault, is it? Is the referee dropping your ball for you? Is that what's happening? You know?
Yeah. And then he said, this is another quote from him. He says, "I'll sound like an idiot, but defensively we did a sound job. They should have been up by 50 or 60 at half time. Well done, they won and we didn't, but I just don't get the first half," end quote. What is he talking about? They should have been up by 50 or 60 at half time. Imagine that. Imagine a team being up by 50 or 60 at half time. He thinks that would be acceptable, that the other team would be up by 50 or 60 points at half time.
The Gillaroos versus England. Defensively they weren't good. That's there's a numerical value that is available to determine how good a team is defensively. It's called the score. Just in case Ricky Stuart hasn't heard of it. They lost by 40. It was 20-0 in the first half, right?
It was 30-0 at half time.
30-0.
And then 40-12 at full time.
So defensively they were not good because they let in 30 points. You know, when I first started following rugby league when I was like 8 years old, I remember my grandfather saying to me, the worst games are the ones where a team scores 20 points and still loses, because that shows how bad they are at defence. That's 20.
Yeah.
And still loses.
Yeah.
Right, that means they've let in more than 20 points. It shows how bad at defence they are. Now, my grandfather, granted, wasn't a first-grade rugby league coach, but he did attend all of the 11 in a row St George finals.
Yeah, right.
But that was always something that I've really held true to my heart for my rugby league belief. If you score 20 points and lose, that means you've had more than 20 points scored against you. That means your defence was shocking. They had 30 points scored on them in the first half. Their defence was shocking.
I mean, to suggest a team did a sound job defensively after they conceded 40 points in a game, that's just a load of nonsense. It's also a load of nonsense to defend a team leaking 30 unanswered points in the first half, and to defend them by saying, the other team should have been up by 50 or 60, that's equally as absurd.
That shows how bad your team is, that they should have been up by 50 or 60, and actually the other team, in this case Manly, must have been pretty bad as well, because they couldn't score 50 points on how bad the Raiders were. So it's
unbelievable, isn't it?
He'll say anything that just like
Nonsense. It's just delusional. And then he went on as if there's some conspiracy against the Raiders and the referees are going out of their way to give more 6 agains to whoever's playing against the Raiders. He says, and I quote, "The 6 agains that go against my poor buggers. I see those tackles every week by certain teams and nothing is done. You tell me why, because I'm not allowed to," end quote. Oh, give me a break. That's just delusional. That's a load of rubbish, implying that there's some conspiracy against the Raiders by the referees. They're giving more 6 agains to the opposition.
Can I just say, the Raiders, right? In the NRL team stats for 2025, on the NRL.com, negative play stats, Raiders are 3rd for number of errors. It's a ref's fault.
Yeah.
They are 4th for ineffective tackles. Totally the ref's fault. 2nd for penalties conceded. Totally all the ref's fault.
Yeah.
And most importantly, again, absolutely the ref's fault. 2nd for handling errors. All the rest fault.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Andrew Abdo has a lot to answer for with how they're treating the Raiders for those handling errors, being 2nd on the 33 handling errors this year caused by the referees and Andrew Abdo.
Yeah. And what's been totally overlooked by people is, Tom Trbojevic didn't even play in that game.
No, that's why I tipped against them.
And they still lost 40-12.
Because he was named.
No Tom Trbojevic.
He was named, and he was in number 1, and they pulled him out on on Thursday. I was talking to Piercy. Piercy sent me his tips, and he's tipped Manly. I was like, "Are you mad? They just do you know?" I said, "Do you know that the Tom Trbojevic just got announced he wasn't playing?" It was like 1 minute before Piercy sent me his tips. And he was like umming and ahhing about it. He said, no, I'll keep it up there because the Raiders is flying too high and Manly will beat him. And he bloody got it right. But I had the Raiders and then I changed it because Trbojevic was out.
Yeah, and I just want to point out as well, the way Jamal Fogarty was talking in the press conference, it wasn't just Ricky Stuart after the game, the way Jamal Fogarty was talking as well in the press conference, this is what Fogarty said in the press conference. He said, it was 2 tries all in the second half. He said that shows the character and resilience of the group, that it was 2 tries all in the second half. Come on, give me a break. Who cares that it was 2 tries all in the second half? You lost 40-12. It was 30-0 at half time. Nobody cares if it was 2 tries all in the second half. Nobody cares. That's meaningless.
That's delusion on the grander scale. I saw this once at a Parramatta Bulldogs game where it was 22-0 at half time, Parramatta. And obviously it was very bad for we obviously have Parramatta and my wife is a Bulldogs supporter. But then the Bulldogs came back and won 24-22.
Yeah.
Right? And so at the station it was really funny when we were going home and the Bulldogs fans were all cheering and making fun of the Parramatta tries. And the Parramatta guys with the drums and stuff had come up with this chant. It was, who scored the first try? Who cares? Yeah. You went out of your way to make that. Like, that's rubbing it in. Bro, you lost 24-22. You lost.
Yeah.
Who scored the last one?
Yeah.
Who scored the match-winning one? Like, who cares? Who cares, like, that they only scored two tries apiece?
All that matters is who wins and who loses at the end of the 80 minutes.
They scored 2 tries apiece in the second half. Well done. They scored 30 points in the first.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's delusion on the grander scale to think that matters.
And Fogarty also said, if we could have stopped the momentum in that 10-minute period where we had a player sin bin, it would have been a different game. Yeah, if.
Look, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
But is he relevant?
Yeah.
If they hadn't have scored more points than us, we would have won.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. But they did.
Yeah. So Fogarty sat there with a straight face after the game and convinced himself that it was great that it was 2 tries all in the second half after they've lost by 28 points and they were down 30-0 at half time. So it was a load of nonsense. It's almost like the Raiders just pre-plan their excuses if they lose. Sure it's like they've got a handbook of this is what we're going to say if we lose. Just a load of nonsense. And what they should have said, the reporters should have made more of a point of saying it. They should have just said, you do realise that they didn't have Tom Trbojevic today. You had a huge advantage. The opposition didn't have their star player today. But that just got completely overlooked by everybody.
They didn't have the player that they have a 40% win rate without. and you've just contributed to them. They lose more than they win.
They win 1 in 3 with him out of the team. With him in the team, they win 2 out of 3.
Like, they lose more when he's not there, and you've just contributed to the negative stat. You are the negative stat here.
But I just we expect it from Ricky Stuart by this stage, but for Fogarty to do it as well, I thought that. But I looked at that and I watched that press conference with those two, Stuart and Fogarty, and I saw what Fogarty said, and I just thought it's almost like they're creating a culture there of like.
Referee blaming.
Well, and creating excuses for themselves. If they're convinced, they're justifying a 28-point loss to themselves as if it's okay.
I actually listened to a sports coach. What is it called? Mental coach thingy podcast today. It was an interview with him. I'm not listening to some kind of mental coach thing to improve my mental. I'm already perfect. But he was saying that. One of the things he comes across a lot, especially in sporting things, is excuse making, and that's the one thing that they have to get out of their personality if they ever want to be winners, right? It's not. You should never have, if you want to be like a champion. Like he used Michael Jordan as an example. Michael Jordan, if he had a bad game, he didn't. In his mind, like he might have in the media and stuff like that, in the mind, he didn't say that's because the referee was bad, that's because Andrew Abdo is bad. He went, what do I need to do to improve? What do I need to fix? And that's the way you get to the champion mindset. It's really interesting, like the Raiders have this, and Ricky Stuart have this mindset of everything is everyone else's fault.
Yeah.
If everything is everyone else's fault, then you never need to change. Was the whole end of like the profound statement the guy was saying. Like, you got to realize that if you've never done anything wrong, and it's always someone else doing something wrong, you don't need to fix anything to do it right.
Yeah. So Ricky Stuart's in his 12th season at the Raiders, hasn't won a premiership, but that's everybody else's fault that he hasn't won a premiership. The Raiders as a club haven't won a premiership since 1994. So in 30 plus years since then now, it's just everybody else's fault since then, is it?
Yeah.
It's not their fault as a club.
Continuing with that means they never need to change anything.
Yeah.
So they
can keep going, they can keep rolling through the decades without winning premierships and just blaming everybody else.
And the other thing that was interesting in that podcast was he pointed out, like, in a sporting competition, especially sporting, in any kind of competition, he's talking about chess and like everything, right? But in any kind of competition, you can never ever expect the opponent to change if they're winning, right? So even if it is their fault, referee's fault, blah, blah, that you're losing, you are still losing. And so you can't expect them to change to help you to win. You know, Ricky Stuart can't expect the rest of the league, all the other teams to go, we better start giving Canberra a fair go. You know, if they drop the ball, we'll just give it back to them.
Yeah.
Because they want to win.
Yeah. If Penrith lost a game like that, Ivan Cleary would have just said, look, my players weren't good enough today, and he would have given credit to the opposition. If Melbourne had lost a game like that, Craig Bellamy would have blamed it on his own players, would have blamed it on himself. He would have said, we weren't good enough today, well done to the opposition. They're the two best clubs in the league. They're there for a reason. They don't make excuses like this after they lose games.
They don't expect other teams to change to help them win, and they change themselves. That's like in that Dragons period, I think I've talked about before, when the Dragons were good years and years ago, and then they had a shocker of a game, and there was footage of Wendell Saylor dancing in the... he had a bad game. He was dancing in the sheds before, and Wayne Bennett just left a note on his Wendell Saylor's locker that says "less dancing, more winning." It's his. See, what that point of that is, he expected his players to change.
Yeah,
he didn't expect the other team to change. You know, they all make excuses, but Ricky Stuart makes worse ones than anyone else, and it's never going to fix the Raiders to keep doing it.
That's the thing. It would be one thing if they had a loss by 4 or 6 points and there were a number of contentious decisions. That's one thing. They lost by 28 points. Come on, it's not the referee's fault if you're losing by 28 points. I'm sorry. Seriously, it's just ridiculous.
It's not the referee's fault if your players complete at 67%.
But that's the thing. In the first half, they only completed. But it's almost like the second half statistics don't matter because the game was over at half time.
Well, it was. Yeah.
It was 30-0 at half time, and they completed 6 of 12 in the first half. So it was only 50% in the first half. So obviously they improved their ball control in the second half. But who cares about that? They were down 30-0 at half time. The game was over at half time.
It's hard to come back.
So the second half stats mean nothing in that game. Because it was over at half time. The game was won and lost in the first half.
Exactly. Over to Parramatta.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, we got a few things for that game, and I know you've put down the Josh Curran thing.
Yes.
In a couple of things. But so Nathan Hindmarsh, Dylan Brown has, since he signed that deal, has been shocking.
Mm-hmm.
His fifth tackle options are awful. Right? Like awful. And he's expected to go to Newcastle and be this gun halfback that's going to pair with Kalen Ponga and win him a premiership. And I think the funniest thing I saw was after that Josh Curran penalty, in which the Parramatta were in prime position to get into the game and cause the upset. The fifth tackle option was there's the comment. Fifth tackle option on a set in which you're attacking after the Josh Curran penalty is your $1.3 million man passes the ball out on the full.
Yeah.
So Nathan Hindmarsh is suggesting that they should release Dylan Brown now. I don't think it'll make a difference to Parramatta's season, to be honest.
That's the thing, and I mean, there is one sort of line of argument of, if you let him go right now, are you just giving up on the season because they don't have Moses at the moment? But then you go, the season is done anyway. They're not going to do anything this year. I mean, they're done. They're not going to make the 8 this year. So everything they do should be about building for the future. And so maybe it is the right move to let him go now and blooding a young player in there. He's going to be gone at the end of the year. There are a couple of different ways of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, if you let him go now, there's no one to spend that money on this year. Like, who are you going to get for the rest of this year? So
who cares?
There's that argument of, do you just keep him because you can't buy anyone else in? Well, but I'm not saying on it. I get where Nathan Hindmarsh is coming from because he's got that frustration of being an ex-player, and he's looking at it and going, this guy doesn't want to be at my club. He's not delivering now.
I think they should
just let him go.
They should release him. Newcastle take him now. There's no point. Like you said, they're not unless Mitchell Moses comes back and Kalen Ponga's Parramatta into a 10-game winning streak and they get into the finals on the back of that. They don't look like a team that if Dylan Brown was actually the $1.3 million man, Parramatta should have beat the Bulldogs. They were in prime position to beat the Bulldogs.
And his opposite wasn't there. Matt Burton wasn't there.
Their forward leader wasn't there. Their most senior forward wasn't there. Their 5'8" wasn't there. Bulldogs' attack was disjointed.
Yeah, as you would expect without those players.
It was 3 tries to 2. What's his name? Stephen Crichton missed 2 conversions. Did get that penalty goal.
Yeah.
So, and then Parramatta missed their conversions.
Yeah.
But you think it was 16-8. It could have been 16-12. But again, only 3 tries to 2. So Parramatta was in prime position to win. But instead of on a beautiful chance to score a try, the fifth tackle option was to pass the ball out behind the winger.
Yeah. And doesn't this just confirm that in the end Parramatta are better off here with him leaving?
Yeah,
he's not worth the money. This is a bizarre decision by Newcastle to sign this player on $1.3 million a year for 10 years.
Must be regretting it by now.
Good luck to Dylan Brown, as we say. Of course, he's not going to knock that deal back. Anybody would take that deal in his position. Good luck to him. He sets himself up. He sets his family up for life on that money. But gee whiz, Newcastle, what's going on there? This is not the player you give that deal to.
I was thinking about it after our podcast last week, and I'm just thinking, if Adam O'Brien gets let go or leaves Newcastle, whoever the new coach is stuck with Dylan Brown as well. And not for a short time. Like, he could go through 4 coaches. How many coaches has Daly Cherry-Evans been through at Manly?
But this is a thing, right? When we talked about it before, right? Daly Cherry-Evans and Tom Trbojevic are probably, well, they're certainly both in the top 10 players in the competition. Yeah. We would agree with that. They get paid huge money, and they haven't won a premiership for 14 years with those 2 superstars on their roster on huge salaries. Newcastle are giving that money to Dylan Brown.
He must have the best manager in the history of the game.
Seriously, as I say, it hasn't worked. As I say, DCE has won a premiership there, but it came in his first year when he wasn't on much money. Since he's been on the big money, and Tom Trbojevic has been on the big money with him, Manly haven't won a premiership, and that's with those 2 on your roster. So the big money deals haven't even worked for Manly with those 2. How's the big money deal going to work for Newcastle with Dylan Brown on $1.3 million a year? I saw somebody made that argument of, but yeah, if you let him go now, you're giving up on the season. It's like the season is done.
Yeah.
It's not happening this season. They should be making all of their decisions should be for their long-term benefit now, not for 2025, because 2025's done for them, whether Dylan Brown stays or doesn't stay.
They need to go Bulldogs 2023, scorched earth the crap out of that. Have all of their fans go, what the hell is going on? They're letting go of 45 different players. All the players don't want to be there. Oh my God, 2024 is going to be so terrible. I can't see the forest for the trees and then, come out and be good. They fully need to go scorched earth there.
Yeah, well, Jason Riles should just be looking at what Cameron Ciraldo and Phil Gould did in 2023.
Yeah, exactly.
He should just look at that as the model and go, well, how do I apply that to my current situation and do exactly the same thing?
And letting go of Dylan Brown is the first step in that, for sure. I mean,
and that's the thing. You also have a situation where you got someone who is moving on. He probably doesn't want to be there, and that might have a negative effect on others at the club. If you let him go now, well, you clear that problem. You get rid of that problem, and you move forward. You look forward, and you get rid of someone who doesn't want to be there and is going anyway at the end of the year on huge money somewhere else. So there is a lot to like about this argument that they should just cut him loose now.
And then still in that game, Josh Addo-Carr managed to score against his old club.
Yes.
These football players really need to understand there's a time and place for celebration. When you're losing, that's not the time or the place.
Seriously, I think, did you say it last week, calm the farm?
Yeah, calm your farm, man.
Seriously, I mean, the way he he even carried on after Penasini scored the try. He was shaking Penasini. And it's like, Josh, you didn't score that try. Somebody else scored the try. You're playing for a team that's now lost their first 3 games of the season. They're on the bottom of the ladder. He went way over the top after he scored his try. It was like all that, let's trot rubbish after he scored his try. Like, come on, he left his last club in very regrettable circumstances last year. So, you're in a team, as I said, that's lost their first 3 games straight this year.
They've just lost as well. They get smashed.
But that's the thing, but everybody had to go at Tua Polotu for the Dragons for the way he celebrated. Well, the same applies to Josh Addo-Carr, doesn't it?
Yes, it absolutely does. Seriously, man, they need to read the room about where they are. Like, are you going to do that nonsense if you're down by 60? What's the cutoff here? I'm really curious. I like to apply numerical values. Yeah. What's the cutoff?
I'll tell you what I think with post-try celebrations. This is purely my theory on it is, I think you only do it if your team's got the game won wrapped up. I think that's when you do the post-try. If your team's ahead by 20 points with 5 minutes to go, then you celebrate all you want. But I don't think you should have over-the-top celebrations when the game's still in the balance. And I certainly don't think a team that's lost 3 in a row and is on the bottom of the ladder and lost that game on the weekend should be having post-try celebrations like that.
You think about they have had 104 points scored against them. 104, and they've only scored 32. Again, what's the cutoff here? What's the limit? Like, where? I mean, from the player's perspective, if you're losing and you don't look like you're gonna win, you try a celebration. Like, it's just weird, actually. Like, what are you actually celebrating? What he should have been done is like put the ball down and then get back everybody. Like, all right, guys, we just scored a try. Let's get back into what we can win from here. Not get super excited about scoring against your club. Now, the best try celebration I ever saw in my entire life was when Willie Mason played his first game against the Bulldogs after going to the Roosters and slid in under the posts and just stayed on the ground.
Yeah, he didn't. I don't think he overly celebrated that one.
No, he just laid on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, just lay there and didn't move.
But that was probably the right way to handle it, right?
It was the best. I loved it. It was actually so funny. And so he was down there laying there for like 20 seconds, just licking his lips. And it looked at me like, what should I do here? I just scored against the Bulldogs. Should I fully rub it in?
Yeah.
No, I'll just get up.
I remember that game. I remember there was talk in the media leading up to that game, and Sonny Bill was still at the Bulldogs at that stage before he left terribly. There's the way that he left. But that was when the shoulder charge wasn't outlawed at that time, and Sonny Bill, there was talk, he's going to look for Mason and shoulder charge Mason. And it really added to the theatre of that occasion. It really did. But that was probably the right way of handling it by Willie Mason, that understated celebration like that.
It was so funny.
But Addo-Carr celebrated like his team had won the grand final. Both times. Even on the one where he didn't, even on Penasini's try, he didn't even score the try.
They really need to calm their farm.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, just calm down, bro. You just look like a fool. And if they continue with this behaviour, I know Shane Flanagan said, what's his name? Christian.
Tuapolotu.
Yeah, I'll give you the name. Like, he's not allowed to do it anymore. He said, I like it. They should be allowed to celebrate their tries and stuff like that, but you have to understand.
Yeah, Tuapolotu did it when they were down by 18. Yeah. That was a bit much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then he did it again in the Rabbitohs game, and then they ended up losing. Like, that's the problem with it. Like, you look like a fool.
That's why I reckon just do it when you got the game wrapped up in hand.
If you score a match-winning try in the last 10 seconds,
go for it.
If you're up by 20 and there's 5 minutes to go, but otherwise you just look like go to the internet, all rugby league players, and search for 10 times where MMA fighters look like idiots. And you always see the ones where they're like dancing. Like, Anderson Silva is the most famous one, right? Because Anderson Silva was the GOAT. And I can't remember who it's against. I think Chris Weidman maybe. He's like dancing in front of him and stuff like that. And then he gets a head kick knockout. Like, he gets knocked out. So you just look like an idiot. So read the room, guys. Calm your farm. Understand when there's times to celebrate. In that try week, when they get money for doing
that's all right.
Do them on every one of them.
Yeah, that's all right.
But still in the Bulldogs game, man, the Josh Curran penalty was the most funniest thing ever in the history of rugby league. So, what is it? Josh Curran was standing behind the ref. Parramatta player ran off, and Josh Curran yelled at him that he was offside, so the Parramatta player stopped running, which interfered with the play of the ball, and Josh Curran was penalised. Spirit of the game penalty. It's against the rules. You're not allowed to impersonate a ref and interfere with the play. I thought it was hilarious, but still I accept the penalty.
Okay, so my theory, my opinion is that I just think, again, spirit of the game. I mean, that is in the rule book. But how do you define that? I don't know how you define that. But anyway, my opinion is that I think that if a player calls a player on the opposition team offside and pretends to be the referee, and that player falls for it, too bad. Well, The Parramatta player fell for it, That's my view, and that's just too bad. If the referee didn't say it, the referee didn't say it. If someone gets away with impersonating the referee, good luck to him. That's my view.
The ref took it as, because the circumstance is Josh Curran was standing behind the ref. So the ref took it as he was intentionally impersonating. They do it all the time. The players will yell offside and stuff like that, but they don't stand behind the ref and do it. You know, that's like spirit of it's actually against the rules to impersonate the ref and interfere with play. That's one of the defining rules of spirit of the game. So
to be honest, I don't know what spirit of the game means. I have no idea what it means.
It's a penalty.
It is in the rule book, but I don't know what it means. I've got no idea.
That's one of the examples in the clarification thing or something. I saw a post on Reddit where they actually posted where it has like intentionally impersonating a referee and interfering with the general play or something like that is a spirit of the game breach penalty, warrants a penalty. You know, so. But like, I don't care if it's a penalty or not. I thought it was hilarious, and I remember like there was a few when Anthony Watmoe was playing. I can't remember the player he did it to, right? But a player that had previously been in Manly was playing for Parramatta and was wrestling in a tackle, and Anthony Watmoe yelled out whatever the player's nickname was and said like whatever it is, like pass it, and then the guy passed it to Anthony Watmoe. Because it was like the second game of the season or whatever, and you know the guy had been used to playing with Anthony Watmoe, and Watmoe like tricked him. Is that against the spirit of the game? It was hilarious.
Yeah. And this is the thing, like, and a player who comes to mind with this sort of thing is Josh Reynolds. There were a couple of instances where I think I've talked about it before. There was a game against Manly a number of years ago where I think it was the scores were level at the end of the game, and a Manly player put his hand between Reynolds' legs, and Reynolds has just taken a big somersault dive up in the air on his head and got the penalty from the ref. And there was another instance against another game against Manly, the Bulldogs against Manly, in a finals game at a crucial time. I think it was Josh Reynolds who actually kicked the ball into the referee, and then anomaly in the rules is the attacking team actually gets the scrum feed in the attacking half under those. So it's sort of like sometimes there's gamesmanship, you know, and sometimes you have to just go, all right, it happens. It's part of the game.
You know, there's Brad Fittler once told a story where he put up a bomb and it was taking ages to come down. And so it took so long to come down that he was able to get to the fullback before the ball came down and stop in front of the fullback. And the fullback's looking up ready to catch it. And Brad Fittler said to him, it's taken a long time to come down, isn't it? And then he looked down and the ball fell straight between them. So is that against the spirit of the game? And that's the issue with the penalty, right? The spirit of the game is too loosely defined. But I do know, like I said, I saw a thing that said it is actually specifically against the rules to impersonate the ref and interfere with the play. And I think that referee, whoever the referee was...
Wyatt Raymond.
Yeah, mainly took it because Curran was standing... It happened, like I said, it happens all the time. So you see players constantly yelling forward, offside, that kind of thing, you know. I've even seen players yell dominant tackle, right? But the main thing is, because he was standing behind the ref, it was a little bit over the top in the referee's eyes. You know, like, dude, you are clearly... Like, you know that you're like really pretending to be me and don't pretend to be me.
Couldn't he have just given him a warning first time and just said, look, don't do that again, mate?
Yeah,
you know?
He could have. But it didn't have an effect of the game. I just thought
it didn't, but my attitude to it was... It
was so funny.
My attitude to it was, well, if you fall for that,
yeah,
you know, that's too bad. Other players on the other team are allowed to call out to you. If they do a good job of impersonating the referee and you fall for it, well, it's too bad. That's my opinion anyway.
But yeah, it's I thought it was hilarious, and I wish... but the problem with the penalty for me is that it takes away... People might be too afraid to do that kind of stuff, and I love it. It's so funny. Like, you remember the stories of it, you know? You remember Josh Reynolds kicking the ball into the ref and Josh Morris running over and explaining the rule to him and going, yeah,
that's right.
If it hits you, that means we get it back. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But isn't that just part of the theatre of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a newish ref as well, so he's probably trying to stamp his authority.
Probably.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. I'm sorry. And the funniest thing about it, I just think, is the fact that Dylan Brown threw the ball out on the fifth tackle in the next set, in the ensuing set, the penalty set. He threw the ball out. Like, that's you're in prime position to actually, like, get into the game and win the game. Like I said, they only lost by, 10 points, right? Yeah.
8 points, yeah. 16-8, yeah.
They could have put him back in the game.
Yeah, and look, I know they don't have Moses at the moment, but they were playing against a team without Burton and Kickout.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a real opportunity for them to get their first win, and they didn't take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that fifth tackle option really summed up Parramatta's year.
Yeah.
With Dylan Brown in the main.
Yeah, they'd have to be. I haven't looked at the odds, but they'd have to be spoon favourites now. I would have thought.
Yeah. Checked it yesterday.
Yeah.
And so still on television.
Yes.
Everything's happening on television this week. It's like they're trying to get free-to-air television back into the news.
Yeah, well,
so people will start watching it.
100% Footy was in the news. The bosses at Channel 9 would have been happy about the publicity that got.
Yeah, I didn't even know the show existed until it was in the news, to be honest.
I don't normally watch it. I only watched it because of I only wanted to see the DCE part of it.
I just watched that clip in post.
Yeah,
that's the way television.
That's the thing.
works.
You can just watch the clips you want.
Yeah,
right?
that's how television works for me now.
Yeah,
I watch what I want when I want.
But why sit through the ads when you can just watch the best clips?
What I want when I want, not be dictated to what I'm going to watch.
Yeah.
And so Phil Gould was on it on what day was it?
Monday night.
Monday night. Yeah. And had a bit of a. Well, some people are saying a dummy spit.
Yeah, he was asked, his thoughts about a pre-season gag order which forbids NRL coaches from mentioning referees in their post-game press conferences. Of course, this relates to Ricky Stuart the other day and how he tried to carefully make it look like he wasn't bagging the ref, even though he clearly was.
He was, yep.
And it comes after, Gould was fined $20,000 by the NRL last year, but the NRL eventually agreed to suspend the $20,000 fine. So he was fined, but he wasn't really fined. It was one of those wanting to be seen to be doing something, but not actually doing anything about it. So when they were talking about it, he walked off as if to put on a bit of a show, going, "Oh, I can't say anything." And it's like, yeah, I get the humorous side of it, and he's doing a great job. I'll give him credit. He is, as Bulldogs general manager. The proof's in the pudding. They're the only team to be 3 wins after 3 rounds. So he's doing a great job there. But what I would say is, he can't have it both ways. He's employed on huge money as a club official. So he has to be treated like any other club official. And that means he can't make certain public comments about the match officials and their performance, and that's the way it goes. He can't have it both ways. He doesn't have to be employed by a club if he doesn't want it. I mean, I hope that he continues to be. He could walk away from that job tomorrow if he wanted to. If he's not happy with the constraints that are put on him as a club official, well, then don't be a club official anymore, and then you've got free rein to say whatever you want in the media.
I'm now at the point where I think they should be allowed to criticise because the referees are a little bit too protected. I don't think the public should be allowed to criticise. It's not really the referees. I don't think people should be like. There's two sides to it that I see. Is you don't want Ricky Stuart to be allowed to criticise the referees. Actually, you just don't, because that will just be his press conference every single time, whether they win or lose. Ricky Stuart will just talk really badly about the referees, right? But they need to be able to give fair criticism of the referees. Again, go back to 2010 or whatever, 2009, that decision by the bunker to disallow the Bulldogs try in that Jamie Soured Milkman incident, right? Mm. That literally decided the game. Okay? Literally. Jamie Soured milked the penalty, it went to the bunker, everything, by hanging on to Jamal Idris. Try was disallowed, Dragons win, right?
Yeah.
But no coach or club official is allowed to go into the press conference and say, dude, what the hell? Mm. There is fair criticism there that should be given to the decision. I'm a Dragons fan, and I was like, that sucked for the Bulldogs fans. Mm. Everybody knows that it was wrong. The decision was wrong. And so fair criticism needs to be allowed. But then the problem is, they're like school kids, If 2 kids fight over Pokemon cards, you have to ban Pokemon cards from the school.
Yeah.
And coaches like Ricky Stuart that are the kids fighting over the Pokemon cards, so everyone isn't allowed.
That's it. But that's the point, right? The point to make is Of course, there are occasions where there are valid criticisms to make of the referee's performance. There are, but the problem is if you allow that, well, then you leave it open for the Ricky Stuarts to just blame the referee, even when they lose by 28 points, to just give it to the ref at every opportunity and never take accountability for yourself. That's the issue. The issue is, yeah, there are times where the referee gets it wrong. There are times where it is warranted to criticise the performance of the referee. But the issue is that if coaches are given an inch, they'll take a mile on this. They'll just give it to the referee every time to overshadow their own poor performance. And that's why I'm more now in the camp of they shouldn't be allowed to criticise the referees at all. All right, it's not perfect, but I think it's the best possible approach when all things considered.
The thing is, they used to be allowed to criticise the referees. It's not like well, it's no longer a new thing. They had to take it away from them because they fought over their Pokemon cards. Yeah, then you have the ex-players and so on and so forth that then call for the referees should have to do a post-match press conference. You know why they don't actually? Because no one will watch or care. Honestly, the other problem with the whole criticism of referees is the NRL as a governing body, or whoever, Andrew Abdo, whatever, so rarely admits that the referees were wrong, even though they are wrong so often. And so that's where real frustration comes, because the only people who are able to criticise the referees and point out where stuff is wrong is the media. But even when everybody, fans and media know that the referees got it wrong, the NRL often will come out and say, no, they got it right.
Yeah, and I think they've done away with those Graham Annesley debriefs now, and I think that was the right move. That's just putting far too much attention on it. If the referees have made a mistake or they haven't made a mistake, look, just forget it, move forward, don't dwell. Those Graham Annesley Monday press briefings were just a waste of time.
Oh, absolutely.
They almost just added to the frustration.
When a referee gets it wrong, it only actually matters if it is a match-deciding decision, like the Jamal Idris, Jamie Soward one. That's actually the only
when it's literally on the last play of the game where that decision determines the outcome of the game. That's
the only time it actually matters. They still go on about that bloody hand of God, Manly Cowboys or whatever it was, 10 years ago. They still go on about that. That game wasn't won on the back of that hand of God. And, I don't know if the website still exists. I think I told you about it before. That ref got it wrong. After the Dragons-Roosters grand final, all these Roosters fans were like, oh, Dean Young knocked it on. Oh, Brett Morris went out.
Did you say there's a website?
There used to be. I don't know if it's still there. refgotitwrong.com.au.
The people doing that website, seriously, get a life.
I don't know if it's still there, but yeah, it used to be a breakdown.
Who does a website on decisions the ref got wrong?
It was
those people need a life.
Rugby. It was so ridiculous.
Seriously,
it was a rugby league website. Only it's gone now, thank God. But that in that Dragons Roosters grand final, they was whining about Brett Morris not being called out or Dean Young's try being a knock on. But I can't even remember the score, but it was 80 other minutes for the Roosters to win it. That's what I mean. It doesn't matter if they get it wrong as much as people want it, but bring it up. But I still think the issue is because people need to be able to criticise the refs to help them improve. Because again, back to that sports coach, refs can't get better if they don't think they got it wrong, right? And the NRL always saying they got it right doesn't give people the confidence that the refs will ever get it right. And then you ban when they have the gag orders and the club saying I got a gag order and the coach is saying I got a gag order, I'm not allowed to say anything bad. It kind of builds and builds and builds, and because the NRL never wants anyone to say anything wrong. But again, I think the flip side that far outweighs it is if you let Ricky Stuart criticise the refs, that's all he'll do.
Yeah.
We'll just see hour-long press conferences of him with no foundation, no reality, just this basically slandering referees.
Yeah.
That's the assumption that I have, allegedly, whatever, to prevent me from getting sued by Ricky Stuart. But that's my assumption, and that's I assume that's how the NRL is. Bruh, I mean, we could let him criticise us, but you know that if we do them, Ricky Stuart's just going to sit there and like really say terrible things about the referees over it. He's going to call all the referees weak-gutted dogs. So we probably can't ever have any. There's no middle ground here, boys. You know, in the board meeting, I'm sure of it. Boys and girls.
That's right.
Girls on the board.
That's right. There's no perfect solution here. So you can only have the best solution.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just. To be honest, I think the best way is just coaches can't talk about the referee in the press conference after the game.
Can't bag
and not just them match club officials as well, like Phil Gould.
Yeah.
And again, with regard to Phil Gould, if you don't like it, all right, don't be a club official anymore.
Yeah.
Resign as a club official and then just be a media pundit only, and then you can say whatever you want.
The rest completely.
Yeah, and then you can't have it both ways. He gets paid $1 million a year to be the Bulldogs GM. If you're taking that big paycheck, well, that comes with, responsibilities like not criticising match officials publicly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Over to the Broncos. And Reece Walsh is copping all of the blame for everything that goes bad at the Broncos right now.
Even after they won, he copped
even after they won.
Yeah.
He didn't have the best game, but and Willie Mason's statement that he's playing badly enough to be in reserve grade, I think, is a little bit unfair.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird way. I saw Willie's quote, and he sort of said it in a weird way. He sort of didn't say, Reece Walsh should be in reserve grade. He sort of said it like, if it was anyone else other than Reece Walsh, they would be in reserve grade. He sort of said it like that. It was one of those.
They're not going to let their $1 million fullback, not $1 million, but their $1 million fullback play in the reserve grade. Let's be realistic here.
So he sort of said it without saying it, type thing.
Yeah. They did only beat the Cowboys, who are also in a shocking run of form, 26-16, and Reece Walsh didn't have the best game, right? This is the thing. Reece Walsh is really, really like that early young gun, full X-factor fullback that everyone goes through that is really rocks or diamonds, he had 5 errors. Gave away 2 penalties and was put on report.
And he threw several needless passes as well.
Because, I still think that I'm Nostradamus here. I think the Bulldogs are, with Ben Hunt and Adam Reynolds, they're not gelling as a team, as a spine, as well as they should, because those two guys are actually, not personality-wise, but playing-wise, not suited to playing with each other. And it's having a knock-on effect, because you have your halves and you have your fullback as a support player of the halves. I would say, I'm totally guessing, that Reece Walsh is currently having an issue with who should he follow. Should he follow Ben Hunt or should he follow Adam Reynolds? And again, it's not like a vindictive thing between Adam Reynolds and Ben Hunt. I just think that those two players are not suited to being a halves pairing because they're too similar and they're both way too dominant. And I think that Broncos will have this. Broncos should have put 50 on the Cowboys if they put 50 on the Roosters. Because Cowboys are shocking. They look like a second Parramatta, And they didn't. And it's because there was some shockers from Reece Walsh, actually. But he's copping all the blame because the stats are coming out in his negative favour. But to be honest, I think it's stemming from that 6 and 7 position.
Yeah, I mean, look, they are still getting the wins. We will point. I mean, they've won 2 from 3. We'll point that out. So, while he didn't play well, they are still finding a way to win. And at this time of the year, that's the most important thing because it's only March and you've got the whole season ahead to get things right. So, from that point of view, he does have time on his side here to turn this around. But this is 2 straight weeks now that we've been left talking about Reece Walsh's game. He had a poor game last weekend as well.
It's awful. Yeah.
Well,
they've got tough.
It is a bit of an issue for them at the moment.
They've got a tough run, right? They got the Dolphins this week, which is okay, and then it's 4th versus 5th with the Tigers. The Tigers are in pretty good form.
Yeah.
They're playing well. Then they got
amazing. The Tigers are in the top 4. I know it's only 3 rounds, but amazing.
Then they got the Roosters. Then they got the Warriors in New Zealand. Then they got the Bulldogs, and they got the Panthers. Then they got the Rabbitohs, who are only 1 win behind them.
And I think I saw, and again, I don't want to mention the odds specifically because I know we get in trouble for that, but I think I saw on one of the betting sites that the Broncos are second favourites to win the comp at the moment. I think that's overkill. I think that's I don't think they should be that short. I've got to say, I don't think that they warrant being the second favourites to win it. That's in my opinion. At the moment.
I agree.
I think that's too short. I think at the moment the bookies are overrating them.
They're tied with Penrith for the second favourite.
That's too short for them.
I totally agree. It's but it is on the back of the Michael Maguire effect, right? Still, and the fact that they're 2 out of 3, so they're coming 5th right now. But like I said, they really should have put 50 on the Cowboys, I think, and it was too many errors at crucial points that prevented them from scoring more points. Actually, like late in tackle count errors, or shaping up an attacking play and then the ball goes to ground or goes the wrong direction. I thought there was a few passes that went the wrong direction. It was clear they had set up a play on the right side and someone passed it to the left, and that's what I think is that's my belief that it stems from the halves.
Yeah, and look, if you were looking at like a pecking order, and I know we're only 3 rounds in, but if you're looking at a pecking order, obviously the Storm and the Panthers would still be the top 2 favourites to win it. But I don't think the Broncos should be shorter than the Bulldogs to win it at this stage. I don't think that they should. I don't think that I'm being biased in saying that. I think.
Are the Bulldogs the only team who have won 3?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, because the Storm are unbeaten, but they had a bye. Yeah. So the Bulldogs are the only team to have won 3 out of 3. So I don't think the Broncos should be shorter than the Bulldogs at this point.
Until this week. Storm will got the Dragons. So this week, Storm will get their 3 from 3.
Yeah. And look, that having been said, I can't see the Bulldogs beating Cronulla without Burton or Kickow. I can't see that happening, I have to say. But as we sit here right now, you'd have... Well, the Bulldogs would be sort of 3rd in the pecking order, wouldn't they? And then you'd have maybe... I think so. And then you'd have maybe... Maybe Manly, Brisbane and the Sharks would be maybe on a level pegging after that, maybe. But I think the Bulldogs are 3rd in the pecking order at the moment, behind the Storm and the Panthers.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, I don't think they'll beat Cronulla without Burton and Kickow. I'm just putting that out there.
I think so.
But we can only go on what we've seen so far, right?
Well, Bulldogs are finding a way to win, even though they've got a whole bunch of... they're in the ladder of those negative stats too. Like, they're in the top 5 for a lot of those negative stats. Did you know that? Like, they're not...
That just means they're defending it really well.
Yeah, so they're... They're ineffective tackles, they're 2nd. It's a lot. They're actually tied with the Knights, 68 ineffective tackles for the year. But they're finding a way to win, and that's the mark of the, potential premiership team. And no matter what, no matter how bad it's going, you find a way to win.
Yeah, if you got Reece Walsh playing the way he's playing, the Broncos shouldn't be second favourites to win the comp. They're being overrated by the bookmakers at the moment, in my opinion.
I think so. Speaking of the Cowboys, well, I'd say Todd Payten's about to get the sack. Round 6. Well, I think we said it last week. Todd Payten's about to get he has the full support of the board.
They keep losing, so the pressure just grows every week, doesn't it?
Yeah, and they're not. It's not looking like it's going to get better for them. They're not playing well. No. They didn't play well against the Broncos. They didn't look good. They've got the Raiders this week, and then they got the Panthers and the Rabbitohs. Then they get their bye. So they've got then Titans and Warriors. Who knows what'll happen there? But look, at this point, I can't see them beating any of those teams, even the Rabbitohs. They're gonna have. I think they're gonna be playing Latrell Mitchell, who looks fit, by the way. He's come back looking like a gladiator. People are always douchebags. Used to call Latrell Mitchell Fat Trell, and I saw people who were like, Fat Trell's gone, it's now Fit Trell. Oh my God, he looks like Luke O'Donnell. But at fullback.
So Todd Payten got to the Cowboys in 2021, he started. It's interesting, he's had a really up and down record. 2021 they finished 15th. 2022 they finished 3rd, make the prelim final. 2023 they dropped back down, finished 11th. 2024 they finish 5th and make week 2 of the finals. And now 2025, it's like they're on track to have another terrible season. They're coming second last at the moment without a win this year.
They don't look good.
So it's funny, he has up and down, up and down, up and down, but if he keeps losing, he's going to be in all sorts of trouble, I think.
They look not quite as bad as Parramatta, but pretty bad. I expect... when I watch the Cowboys right now, I see what looks like a poorly coached team that has more chance of winning than the Eels. Winning a game than the Eels. That's what I see, you know? So, like, at this point in time, we're only 3 rounds in. Who knows? Anyone... But Cowboys could have... they don't have a player like Kalen Ponga, but they could also... There's always the chance that a team can go on a 10-game winning streak on the back of Kalen Ponga. You know? And make the finals. But Todd Payten is this year's Adam O'Brien, so the only reason Adam O'Brien isn't in trouble is because Todd Payten's there.
I'm just looking through the...
Well, the Knights have one too.
I'm just looking through the team list, the Cowboys. It's sort of right, isn't it? There is no real Kalen Ponga in their side.
Where's Jason Taumalolo?
I mean, they got Tom Dearden. He's not a Kalen Ponga, though. Taumalolo started the game against the Broncos.
He's been starting in the front row.
Yeah, and you got Reece Robson there as well. But again, there's no big Kalen Ponga superstar that's sort of going to drive this fight back, is there?
No, well, I can tell you, I can't trust the Raiders, and I'm going to be stupid probably this week and tip them. But I like this, yeah. Because, like the Cowboys don't look trustworthy either, though. But yeah, Todd Payten, I think Todd Payten is one more win away from having the full support of the board.
They keep losing. Yeah, if the losing streak continues, he'll be lucky to make it to halfway through the season.
Well, round 6 is the point in time every year that we see a coach getting the full support of the board.
Well, so I'm guessing that I don't know if they have a bye coming up.
But it's in like 3 or 4 weeks.
Right. Okay. So I'm just having a look here at their schedule.
It's round 7.
Sorry, I think as you said, they got the Raiders, Panthers, Rabbits, and then the bye. So you feel like that bye is where there's going to be an assessment made.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So round 6 is normally the time, right? Yeah. And then they're unfortunate enough to have the bye on round 7.
Yeah.
So Todd Payten will get full support of the board in round 6 before the Rabbitohs game, and then if they lose, possibly he could be gone during the bye.
So if they lose to the Raiders, Panthers, and Rabbitohs before that bye,
I would say
he could be gone at the bye.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
know what? I think that'd be, if that were the case, if they lose their first 6, I think that'd be a fair enough decision.
Trent Barrett could take over, and that could save Parramatta's season. Sorry, Trent Barrett. I know you're a Dragons legend, but still, come on, bro. Not the best coach.
He's not a head coach. He's a good assistant coach, not a head coach.
So big news this week out of the Rabbitohs Sharks game is the Rabbitohs mascot pushed a Sharks fan.
Yeah, it's just bizarre, wasn't it? Only in rugby league, eh?
He initially defended it and said, I was being grabbed, and so I pushed. And if you watch it, it's like there are kids grabbing him, but they're trying to get high fives. And then he pushed the kid in the face, and the kid full stumbled back, and that's the
thing. I think he's lucky to keep his job.
Yeah, it's a volunteer job, and he's really old and been around for 50 years, and blah 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 blah.
Still,
you
push a kid.
You shouldn't push a kid. My mate said to me yesterday, when you hear that kind of thing, right? His initial thought was it was probably some grubby rugby league kid that deserved it, but then you think. Yeah, it's still a kid though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Could it be a case of? We're getting into the specifics of it here, but could it be a case of I don't know what it's like being on the inside of one of those suits?
Oh, it sucks.
Did he not see?
No, you can see. Could he
not see? Would he have been able to see properly?
It's still
like. Well, what excuse does he have for doing that?
Well, that was the thing. He had an excuse, and then he backtracked on the excuse, and then has a obviously club written statement apologising. Because his initial interview was all he was grabbing me, so I was pushing him away to be able to get away. And then, a text-based statement came out apologising. I should never do that again. I do a lot for the community, blah, blah, blah. So it was obvious the Rabbitohs took him aside and went, bro, you can't defend yourself in these kind of situations.
Lucky to keep his job. I would have thought that's pretty straightforward. You're not doing this again.
You'd never know who's in there, though. So even if they said we sacked him, you'd never know if he's still in there. Frank Paul Nuasala used to be the rooster, you know.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
The mascot?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Like, that was one of the funny things about Frank Paul Nuasala was the Roosters mascot and then became the Roosters forward pack mascot. So, yeah, I would say if it wasn't like I think he's 80-year-old man.
81, yeah.
Who's been the mascot for 40 years, obviously never had any issue, does all this work for charity and in the community and all that, he would have lost his job. But the fact is, he's been around for 40 years or whatever, and he's 80 years old, and he volunteers. So the Rabbitohs are like, just release this statement, bro. Zip it, and you can keep your job. All right? And in next week, everyone will forget about it. But I know he's going to cop some flack. Like, you know, this is rugby league.
Yeah, he's got to be prepared for that. There's going to be people who are giving it to him at games now, and he's going to have to be be cop that.
It wouldn't matter if they had have changed the person inside. The person inside would go cop that flack.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
This is rugby league. Fans don't care about. Don't let the truth get away in the way of a good sledge.
Yeah.
So even if they put a new person there, person would be walking down near the fans, there'd be people going, "Don't push me!" So
I think Charlie's lucky to hang on to his job.
Is that his name? Charlie the Rabbit?
Charlie Gallico, his name is. Yeah.
Poor old dude. And then finally, well, there was a lot of heat on Shane Flanagan for his criticism of Lachlan Ilias in his press conference, leaving out everyone else in the team, singling out Lachlan Ilias, who actually we talked about it last week, and then I was reminded by somebody that we didn't mention. Lachlan Ilias is also coming back from a devastating leg injury. And so having form issues is understandable. Like, he was off most of last year with a snapped leg. He's the spokesman for why they have to protect kickers, because he was kicking and then somebody ran through his leg, snapped his leg in half. So Shane Flanagan's criticisms were a bit over the top, and now he's publicly apologised to Lachlan Ilias for it.
Yeah, but the thing that I don't get about it with Flanagan is, like, he could make these criticisms privately to Ilias.
Yeah.
Like that's what I don't get about it. What he says publicly, I mean, it doesn't really matter. You know, he could have just not said anything about him publicly and addressed it privately with him. That's what I don't understand. Flanagan seems to be making a habit of picking fights with his halfback. Like, towards the end of last year, we remember that game where they played against Parramatta, and they lost to Parramatta. I think it was in the second last round last year. And he was seen on the dressing room cameras giving it to Ben Hunt. And he's had that falling out with Ben Hunt that led to Ben Hunt going to the Broncos. And now we're only 2 or 3 rounds in this year, and he's already picking a fight with his new halfback. He needs to be careful here, Flanagan. His job is to get the best out of these players, not pick fights with them.
Well, I think, like, that Rabbitohs game we talked about, like, the Dragons looked so fatigued, which is solely really the coach. The reason they lost was because they couldn't handle the heat. It wasn't because of anything Lachlan Ilias did. It was just in the back end of the game, the Dragons were up like 24-12 or something.
Yeah, they had a 12-point lead in that game.
15 minutes to go. Yeah. And the Rabbitohs, it was hot, no denying. It was 38 bloody degrees.
Yeah.
But the Dragons looked like they were feeling the heat, and the Rabbitohs looked like they were feeling the heat less and managed to win. And that's purely on the coach. And then, you know, one of the conversations I've had in the last week was, when I pointed this out to people, was like, that's what Flanagan's known for, though, like really conditioning his players in the off-season. Yeah, well, based on that performance, he didn't do very well in the off-season. It's not Lachlan Ilias' fault. It's Lachlan Ilias, actually. I've watched the game back now as well, because I was curious. Lachlan Ilias didn't really do anything wrong, per se, any more than Kyle Flanagan did or anyone else in the team. There was the defence that let them down. You have to say, like, they were up 12 points up, and they let 2 tries and that field goal, the guy who kicked it, whatever it's Humphreys or something?
Jamie Humphreys.
Yeah. He's facing the sideline when he gets the ball. It's clearly they are not doing a field goal. He's facing the sideline when he collected the ball and then turned and kicked it.
Yeah.
That's not Ilias's fault. That's Dragons' defense. They had so much time to stop that, you know.
Yeah.
So much time to put pressure on, to charge it down, to do anything. But he had enough time to collect the ball, turn and look and go, I could do a field goal here. And then he did it.
Yeah.
So I think like the letdown was nothing to do with the halves in that game. The letdown was to do with the conditioning and the inability of the Dragons to play 80 minutes in 40 million degree heat. And Rabbitohs just handled it better.
And that's the thing, even if you think Ilias didn't do what he needed to do at the end of the game to close out the game, and you're Flanagan, well, just address it privately then. 100%. Just don't buy it publicly and just address it privately. You can address these matters privately without having to air it in the public domain. I mean, of course the media loved it. The media want a quote. Of course they loved it. But Flanagan's job is not to satisfy the media. His job is to get the best out of his players. And so I thought he should have just dead-batted the question from the media. Don't go into specifics with the media and just address the matter privately with Ilias. That would have been the better way of handling it. There's nothing to gain out of addressing it publicly.
They're about to be 0-3, so you know you can't blame Lachlan Ilias for that. They're playing the Storm this week. Storm's got some players in doubt. They don't have Nick Meaney and Jerome Hughes and maybe Ryan Pappenhausen. And
yeah, I think you might be in a bit of trouble there, mate.
And
yeah,
don't really, you know, and that's like saying Nathan Cleary only played 11 games for the Panthers in 1 year, but they still managed to win the premiership. It's irrelevant, bro. I think the Dragons will definitely lose this week, and they'll be 0-3.
I concur.
And you can't blame Lachlan Ilias for that. And then they have the bye.
No, well, as you mentioned, Ilias has come off that long-term injury layoff, like you said before. And, you know, he's not one of the... This is the other thing. He's not one of the huge money, high-profile halfbacks of the comp. So, you know, you're not going to get a Nathan Cleary or Jerome Hughes or Daly Cherry-Evans game out of him. That's just not what you're going to get.
Only 24 years old.
Yeah.
He's only played 55 games since 2021.
This is the thing. Lachlan Ilias is he's just good enough to be in the NRL. He's probably more suited to the Super League. He'd probably be one of the dominant players in the Super League in England. Well, he's just barely an NRL.
If you remember, I just think that comes down to the fact he hasn't got enough experience. Like I said, 55 games since 2021.
Yeah,
2024, he was meant to be South Sydney's 7.
Yeah.
I've just read it and I'm remembering now. And if you remember after the first 2 rounds, they were getting smashed. And he was the one that took all the blame and got dropped to reserve grade, and they brought Dean Hawkins up, leaving out the fact that Cody Walker and Latrell Mitchell also were in terrible form. And they just put all of the blame on the top of Lachlan Ilias. And then, he went down and broke his leg in like 3 weeks later.
Yeah, that's the thing. He is young, as you said. He doesn't have a lot of experience, and he's young, and he has had injuries. We should point that out. But I think the problem for the Dragons is the reality is that they got 2 halves there in Kyle Flanagan and Ilias who, in all honesty, there's not too many other NRL clubs that they would get a gig at. I've got to be honest about that. And I think that's... If you got 2 halves like that, I think that's a real problem for you.
Yeah, the only full season he's had was 2023 when Souths went on that... they missed the finals even though they were leading the comp after... Like, he's got it in him, but at that time they also had Adam Reynolds. So you can't have Kyle Flanagan and Lachlan Ilias. It's all Lachlan Ilias' fault. But yeah, I think Shane Flanagan's realised the error of his ways, and it's actually, you can't blame Lachlan Ilias for... He probably went back and watched the tape and went, I made a mistake there. can't just blame Lachlan.
Yeah, I think Flanagan's just feeling the pressure.
Yeah. But I don't think he should. So we've talked about it before. They've got to get.
Yeah, he needs time here. It's a long-term rebuild. He is a premiership winning coach. That they need to give him a chance to get the house in order here.
He needs to change the culture that's been there since Wayne Bennett tore the club apart.
Again, these things don't happen quickly. Look at Cameron Ciraldo's first season at the Bulldogs. They had a terrible season. Their defence was atrocious in his first year there. And then they very quickly became one of the best defensive teams in the competition.
Exactly. They just got to go to Camden Valley Wrestling and Gresham Mardas meet and greet.
Yeah.
That's it for Rugby League for the week. Games coming up this weekend look all right. Is there any good games this weekend? Rabbitohs are going to get smashed. Roosters should smash the Titans. Dolphins are going to get smashed.
Yeah, the Sharks will beat the Sharks will smash the Bulldogs without, or maybe not smash, but I think the Sharks will beat the Bulldogs without Burton and
that actually might be the game of the round.
Yeah, probably.
Because,
that's the thing. I'm probably being a bit harsh saying the Sharks will win that easily.
Well, I find
the Bulldogs will put up a fight.
At this point in time, Bulldogs fans don't have a lot of faith. I noticed that. Like, they're all like, oh, we'll probably get... But, it's Panthers, Rabbitohs, Roosters, Titans, Broncos, Dolphins, Storm, Dragons, Raiders, Cowboys. That's not the game of the round. That's just hard to pick because you can't trust the Raiders. But it's not going to be a good game. And then Sharks, Bulldogs, and then Manly, Eels. And Tigers, Warriors might be good. I think that'll be a flashy game. But over to tennis, and friend of the show, Nick Kyrgios, has still yet to retire because he thinks he can win a Grand Slam. However, he's kind of showing that he can't. He got smashed in Miami.
Yeah.
What was the score?
Yeah, Karen Kachanov beat him 7-6, 6-love. Bless you.
Thank you.
He only lost Kyrgios only won 7 points in that second set that lasted just 21 minutes. So he lost 6-love in the second set there, only lasted 21 minutes, only won 7 points. This is a problem. He's not in good shape. He can go with a player like Kachanov for the first set, loses at 7-6 in a tiebreaker, okay. But then he can't go with him for both sets, loses 6-love in the second set. And this is the problem. He's not disciplined enough. He's not focused enough to get... And yes, he's had injuries, but he just won't do the work to get his body right. And that means that he just can't go with players like Kachanov for the distance.
Yeah, well, he says nonsense stuff. See his latest quote I just found from him. He was at the video game Call of Duty launch series where you get rewards for winning kill streaks. Yep. But he said, I'd rather have a 10-game winning streak than a Wimbledon win. I'm not even joking.
A 10-game winning
streak.
As in, I don't know what it is.
In tennis, he'd rather win 10 games in a row.
10 matches in a row.
Yeah. Well, he does have to win 6 to win Wimbledon, but that's he's just nonsense. He's all over the shop. His mindset is incorrect.
Yeah, well, I don't know what he's... I mean, he nearly won Wimbledon, but he didn't win it.
Yeah.
I don't know, what is that? That's just bizarre. Yeah. Like, of course you'd rather have a Wimbledon title than win 10 matches in a row.
I like the thing. You do only have to win 7 times to win Wimbledon, so if you had a 10-match winning streak at Wimbledon...
you win 7 matches, you win Wimbledon.
He's won 1 game from 5 this year.
And it makes you think, well, why did he bother even coming back at all? It's a waste of time. He should have just retired. This comeback's been a complete waste of time.
Exactly. Go play with your podcast and do your billboards that you pay for and then brag about having.
Yeah. And that's the thing. He carries on stupidly on social media, but that's going to happen regardless of whether he's still playing or not. So
exactly. He's just a social media
influencer now. Yeah, this comeback's just been a complete waste of time. Should have just stayed in that semi-retirement that he was in and made it a permanent retirement.
Another friend of the show, Jannik Sinner, has been confirmed to return to play at the Hamburg Open as expected after his drug suspension.
Yes. Suspension that was... Settlement that was negotiated. Yeah.
I was watching a Ronda Rousey interview the other day that I never forget. I was in a press conference. She's good friends with Nick Diaz, who was famously suspended for 5 years for marijuana. 5 years for marijuana usage. Apparently he had so much THC in his blood or something it would have killed an elephant, but... Because, he's a mad pothead, right? And yet, Jannik Sinner gets negotiated 3 months for steroids from tennis.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, so he's going to play, it's been confirmed he's going to play in this Hamburg Open from May 17 to 24. So he'll already be returned at that, or he will have already come back at that point. He'll return at the Italian Open before his home fans earlier in May. So that he'll play that Italian Open, then he'll play in this Hamburg Open. Yeah, there's a lot of people blowing up about it. They made a big song and dance about it, the organisers of Hamburg, on their social media saying, oh, isn't it great that we've got Jannik Sinner, and people piled on social media saying, oh, how can you celebrate someone who's tested positive to doping, etc., etc., etc. So this is what Jannik Sinner's going to have to deal with now. This is gonna stay with him for... You'd think it's going to stay with him for the rest of his career, isn't it?
Look, I know I'm very critical of the whole thing, but in the end, everybody has to accept that he's going to come back because that's the suspension that was handed now.
Yeah.
Whether the suspension is fair or not is irrelevant, actually, because that's the suspension that was handed down.
At least now he has been suspended, even though it is a token suspension.
Unfortunately, he's a world number one. He's won a whole bunch of, how many majors now? 2, 3, 4?
I think it's 3 now.
Three. He's won 3 majors. He's one of the top players in the current era. He's going to be at all the events, right? You have to accept that, people. And that's just it. That's his suspension. That's what it was, and he'll be back. We can make fun of him for the rest of his life, and we can put a star next to his name for the rest of his life in his tennis career. But you do have to accept that he's gonna play. There's no way around it. Like this.
Yeah, that's right. Look, at some stage you do have to just move on, don't you? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's he's going to do the time. All right, we could debate all day whether it's enough time or whether the punishment did fit the crime, but that's the reality. He's done the crime. He's now doing the time, and once he does do the time, we just got to move on.
He you got to accept that George Jones is going to fight. Well, he's not going to fight Tom Aspinall, but you got to accept that he's back and he's fighting, even though he's been suspended multiple times.
Yeah, it's just not realistic to think.
It's just the way it works.
It's just not realistic to think that is he just going to be banned from playing ever again? I mean, that's just not going to happen.
He'll have to go. We know that tennis is not real good with the drugs,
no.
Their policies and stuff, and it does 100% depend on your lawyer. And it's actually one of the things that I was explained to recently about it is with combat sports, the UFC can suspend the fighter if they want, and boxing can suspend the fighter if they want from fighting in their organisation. That's not actually who suspends the fighter from fighting, though. So in Nick Diaz's case, for example, it was the Nevada Licensing Commission that suspended him for 5 years. Tennis doesn't have that. That's where you actually, because tennis is private, like the organisations are private, they can do whatever they want, right? Yeah. They are not governed by an actual government body when it comes to this. So in the UFC, if Nick Diaz had been suspended and the UFC went, we're going to suspend him for a week, the Nevada State Commission could have still stepped in and said, no, it's 5 years, and the UFC have to live with that. Because the commission won't license him to fight. If the UFC tries to put it on, the commission will say, well, you can't. And if you try and put it on, it's illegal. Whereas in tennis, there's no commission that says Jannik Sinner is 3 months. Tennis gets to decide whatever they want. That's the fact of the matter. Who is it? It's the ITA?
The ITIA.
ITIA gets to decide. That's just it's a private company, whether it's not for profit or whatever. It's a private company that gets to decide. That's it.
And then they did decide, but then WADA decided that wasn't good enough, and WADA have thrown their weight into this. And then now, for whatever you think of it, the authorities in place have come to this 3 months agreement.
Yeah, that's
and it is what it is. Yeah.
We can just put a star next to every one of his matches for the rest of his life, and we can always say now for the rest of his life, the only reason he beats our favourite tennis players is because he was on steroids.
Yeah. And look, the thing is...
when he beats Demonor, It's only because he was on steroids.
And look, I'm sure he will go on and win many more majors. I'm sure absolutely. He will, but he's going to have to live with the asterisk next to his name.
Exactly. For the rest of his life. Every time he beats Demon Orr, it's only because of steroids. That's the sole reason and no other reason. My name is Ricky Stuart. Tennis extraordinaire. It's nothing to do with Alex de Minaur. It's only to do with Jannik Sinner's steroids. Over to cricket. Oh man, this Usman Khawaja saga is. It's like a Days of Our Lives, home and away rugby league thing, all in one.
Yes.
Usman Khawaja is not happy with some stuff that Ian Healy has said. Ian Healy is not happy with Khawaja's response.
Yeah, Ian Healy said he's not happy. And look, Usman Khawaja was seen at the Formula One when Queensland were playing Queensland were playing a game in the lead up to the Sheffield Shield final, and Ian Healy wasn't happy. Ian Healy says, and I quote, "It's just this pick and choose mentality that has been evident in his later years that Queensland haven't been happy with. I'm glad I didn't have my television on. That was to see him at the Formula One." End quote. So Ian Healy's not happy with that, and Khawaja. And I should point out that Ian Healy is the Deputy Chair of Queensland Cricket. That's his official role. And so in that official role, obviously, he, wants what's best for Queensland cricket. And so he hasn't been happy. Well, he's not happy to hear that Usman Khawaja's at the Formula One, not playing for Queensland. And, Usman Khawaja has hit Ian Healy back on that. But I don't know. You got to think with Usman Khawaja, he was born overseas. He came out here to New South Wales when he was 4. He played for New South Wales at the start of his career. He plays for Australia. Australian players don't get much time off. Who cares about state cricket? You know what I mean? Like, seriously, I've got to be honest.
That's what it really comes down
seriously, to. That's the thing. I know we're on a sports podcast here, but Australian players, their calendar is very full. He gets a bit of time off. He's at the Formula One. I can't blame the guy. I couldn't care less about Queensland's lead up to the Sheffield Shield final. I couldn't care less about the Sheffield Shield final.
Well, he had a hamstring injury, and apparently he told them, and Joe Dawes, the coach, said they had no knowledge of it, and then Khawaja fired back and said that was categorically untrue. He did tell them. Queensland and Cricket Australia were both aware he wouldn't be playing game because he wanted to manage his body and had the full support of Test coach Andrew McDonald. So he went the cricket should be looking at itself, Queensland cricket, because Andrew McDonald said, "Yeah, I knew." So Khawaja, does Usman Khawaja know who to tell? Do any cricket players know who to tell? I told many people, and it just didn't get down to this guy, How many people does he have to tell? Then, secondly, I don't think Queensland cricket has handled it very well. They wanted to get a Queensland player on the most popular Australian cricket podcast, Willow Talk, and they were denied. They said they wouldn't allow any Queensland players on because they didn't want them talking out of turn about the Usman Khawaja situation. I think Queensland cricket is a bad guy.
But this is the thing. What you got to look at is you got to look at it and go, who needs who more? Do Queensland need Usman Khawaja more, or does Usman Khawaja need Queensland more? And obviously, Queensland need Usman Khawaja more than he needs them. And so this is a problem if you're Queensland. If you're going to alienate Usman Khawaja, he's 38 years old. He doesn't have long left in his career. He could very easily turn around to them and say, "Stuff you! I'm moving to another state at this stage."
Yeah,
he could go play for. He could go play for anybody. I'm sure New South Wales would have him back. If New South Wales didn't want him, I'm sure WA would have him. I'm sure Tasmania would have him. Any other state, Victoria, South Australia, any other state would take him, right? So he could just turn around and say that to them. If they're going to continue to be hostile towards him, he could turn around and say, "I don't need you. I'm going to play for another state for the last couple of years of my career."
So this is
and that's the thing. He doesn't play. He's not going to play for the state side very often anyway.
So the Willow Talk podcast is Adam Peacock and Alicia Healy, right? this is what Adam Peacock said. We reached out to Queensland and we would really have loved to have a Queensland player on because it's 30 years since that iconic game at the Gabba. Unfortunately, they let us know that a current player was not available because of the Usman Khawaja situation. This came from the top, the CEO. It's unfortunate that as adults we can't ask an adult question about certain things, but we've been banned. End quote. They've really not handled it very well, have they? Like you said, he's going to play in the final. When is the final? Nobody cares. I don't even know.
Yeah, I'll look it up. But
like you said, nobody cares about state cricket.
This is the issue. Really, a player like Usman Khawaja is really doing Queensland a favour by playing for them at this point.
Yeah.
Because as I say, they need him a lot more than he needs
Absolutely.
them. He doesn't need them because he could go and play for any other state side in Australia. So they've really just got, if he doesn't want to play, they've just got to put up with it here. They're lucky to even have him. You talk about the Sheffield Shield final. It's actually just starting as we speak.
Oh.
It's day one. It's starting as we speak. But I don't think many people care, to be honest.
It's not on television. Doesn't matter. Even if
you look at it, could be on. I'm not sure if it's on Fox Cricket
no,
or not.
Free to air.
It could be.
All sport needs to be on free to air. I was having this conversation yesterday at that Wanderers thing. That's the biggest problem with facing so many sports right now in Australia. Only rugby league and AFL and tennis are now on free to air. I mean, netball is on free to air and rugby union isn't.
What about the A-League's on Paramount?
Yeah, A-League.
I think Paramount need a bit more than the A-League to get people to sign up.
The government needs to step in and get these sports on free to air. Really. Like, rugby union, as much as I make fun of it, soccer, cricket, they need to step in and get these sports on free to air because, honestly, like we were talking about before, free to air is a waste of time. If people want to watch what they want to watch when they want to watch it, not be told when they have to watch it. The only thing people are willing to watch when they have to watch it consistently is sport. And you understand you have to watch it when it's on live. You don't have a choice. It's not the kind of thing like, I'll just watch all my sport. I'll binge watch the season. You know, like, you're not going to do that. So people were very understanding about watching it live. And so, honestly, like, all these free-to-air channels, if you want to get ratings, put the sports on there. Government should step in. Like, I know you've got maths, but even then, people are watching maths on, like, the Channel 9 catch-up. I don't know what channel it's on, I don't care. Could not care less about maths. But people are watching that on those catch-up things, watching it when they want to watch it. Sport, you can't do that. I mean, you can, but it's not a consistent thing. Maybe one day, 1 week, you don't watch the game live and you come back at home and watch it on replay because you've spent the whole day saying people, don't tell me the score! Don't tell me the score! All right?
Yeah.
But it's not a consistent thing. So replace maths with the A-League and you'll get more viewers. Replace, what else is there? My Kitchen Rules with rugby union, you'll get more viewers. And get the Sheffield Shield on free to air.
You know, funnily enough, Usman Khawaja is actually batting right now in the Sheffield Shield final. And he's actually on 1 not out off 22 balls.
Oh, wow. Off 22. Oh, my God. That's going to be a hard watch.
But, I mean, you know, they should be thankful that they've got him for the final.
Exactly. That's it for the week. We'll be back next week with more fun and games and Ricky Stuart. Don't forget to go to Optimum CBD for all your CBD needs. You must be over 18 to order. Orders over $99. Get free delivery. Getting to the tipping comp. Different winner every week. We did have an issue with the AFL because based on our provider of our data, after everyone had entered their tips, and you know the changing of the AFL for the opening round, our data provider actually deleted all of the matches and then re-added them. So everyone who had entered their tips didn't get their tips. So we awarded everyone 2 points for the first round. And so you can continue. There's been a different winner every week for the $100, every round for the $100 so far. Make sure, even if you haven't started, you can sign up now Get into it and win yourself $100. And make sure you get into the Smart Play game-based daily fantasy sports. Super fun. Heaps of people are playing the IPL, Indian Premier League in cricket. There's like 20, 30 people playing it every day, every game.
Travis Head got a few runs the other day. I think he got 67 But Pat Cummins got hit for a lot too.
It's 1 in the morning is the game, so I'm never going to watch them.
Some of them are on start early. They start at like 8 o'clock or something. But a lot of them are 1 a.m.
And I don't know enough of the players to
well, it was the only two I was interested in that game. I watched a bit of the other night were Cummins and Travis Head. They're on the same team. I think it might be Sunrisers Hyderabad. Yeah.
Yep. Sure. It's very popular. But get into it. It's really fun to play daily fantasy sports. I play the IPL one just for fun, but I'm terrible at it. I never win. Rugby league, I win sometimes. AFL, I'm just guessing here. But I am going really well in the AFL tipping comp, by the way. I tipped 9 from 9 last week. So
nice.
Even if you don't know what you're doing, or you only have a minimum bit of knowledge, you can still win the $100. I don't get the $100. All right, man. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, John. See you next week.
Good luck to the Bulldogs against the bye this week.